we are trapped not only in a war, we are trapped in our minds, that we are trapped in ideas, in division. But when you go to the very essence of the human being, you just have to think about children that are under 7 years old. They barely understand what a religion is. They just want to play. They don't care about the color of the other person. They don't care about the religion or the nation or the origin of that person. This is all our bullshit. Those who actually are free needs to start thinking about how a child would build a world if there are no adults.
For those free souls that have incarnated into this life that do have basic needs met, living an experience that feels like an echo of freedom, what do you feel like is the responsibility? And what I mean by the responsibility is the ability to respond to the suffering that is experiencing right now in the Middle East. Welcome to the Deja Blu Podcast, where we believe that living a life of magic can be the default. Join us each week as we playfully and authentically dive into the mysteries of life and explore what it truly means to be human. From spirituality, wellness, and all things taboo, we don't hold anything back. So without further ado, let's let the magic unfold. So I'd like to share with you mud water. Mud water has become my morning drink in replacement for coffee because it gives me that beautiful boost of energy and focus without the side effects of the jittery, ungrounded, nervous, and the energy that then crashes later. Mud water is also action-packed with our superfood mushrooms, including lion's mane and cordyceps and reishi, as well as other superfoods to support with that beautiful stream of energy and focus. What I also love about mud water is that they pay forward some of their profits into supporting mental health research through psychedelics. And as you know, if you've been a part of the Deja Blu podcast or have tuned in, that psychedelics have been a big support on my journey of self-awareness and evolution. And so I'm so excited that mud water is paying forward to support with one of the greatest pandemics on the planet, which is our mental health. So if you're interested in getting into mud water and learning more, go to the show notes and there is a link, www.mudwater.blue, and you can get $20 off your order with some free goodies. So go check it out. Hello, beautiful humans, and welcome back to another episode of the Deja Blu Podcast. Today, I have got a real treat in the golden hands. Somebody that has blessed my life, like 2 years ago now? I think it was about 2 years ago.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. We met 2 years ago and we have been on quite the adventure, but only as of late have we been able to spend significant amount of time together and really being able to drop in to many different dimensions, from the realm of play and silliness and lightheartedness and talking about absolutely nothing and everything all at the same time. And then in the same breath, dropping really deep and having life-changing, transformational, what the holy heavens is going on experiences. But of course, no other than Matias De Stefano is back on the Deja Blu Podcast and back in the golden hands. So excited to have you back. And for all of those beings that do not know who Matias is, he is the host of a couple of shows on Gaia, which is dropping some deep wisdom, remembering pretty much every single one of his past lives and being able to recall that information in today's life, in this life, and being able to share ways, tools, tips, wisdom, and a deeper understanding of the history or her story of what's happened in the past to understand where we are moving to. While simultaneously, this man lives one of the most mystical, magical lives I've ever been able to witness, from the sense of that his decisions don't ever come from the mind. And what I mean by that is that his entire life is one giant scavenger hunt, always looking for the next clues. And whenever I'm around him, he reminds me to drop into a deeper place of presence where recognizing every single thing in life, whether it's an animal, whether it's a person, whether it's a physical object, an environment, a location, is always laced with clues. And so this man lives a real life Nancy Drew game where he is always looking for the next clues and then delivering messages for those blessed enough to cross his path, reconnecting them with their mission beyond the mind, reconnecting them to their hearts, and aligning them in what we like to call unfucking them. So as much as we get caught in the fuckery of life, Matias helps people to unfuck themselves and realign them with their dharma and their mission. And I am no exception in that, where he has blessed me specifically over the last couple of days with messages that have come from a really deep place of a zoomed out perspective that has allowed me to see what is right in front of me from a different perspective, that has ultimately liberated me from suffering of a story that I've told myself around what is. And so I'm very, very, very blessed to be able to be friends with Matias, this beautiful human that is in front of us. And we're just going to be sharing a little bit more about what's been happening behind the scenes. But without further ado, welcome to the podcast, Matias De Stefano.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me and for this presentation. I have to record it and put it everywhere.
I will happily be your spokeswoman. I'll stand up on stage beforehand and introduce you to the crowds. And ultimately, there are crowds. There are crowds of humans that follow you to do activations all over the world, from Argentina to the Great Pyramids of Egypt, to the North Pole.
Yes.
There is no stopping you. And in fact, actually, we were just on a Zoom call and it was almost 2 hours long. And there's like this like energy that's running through you that's like, okay, I got to move on to the next thing. I got far too much energy and there's a lot of things that are taking me and weaving me in different directions. And so I guess I want to start with the question, or just more of a context of what even happened last night, and we can go into that.
Yeah, sure.
In my time of knowing you, I've seen that you channel beings, or another way to describe it is you carve out the hollow bone to allow another energy, spirit, or guide enter your physical vessel so that you can deliver a message that lives so far beyond the identity of who Matias is. Mm-hmm. And this is what I truly believe is the definition of sacrifice. Sacrificing your own identity of who you think that you are to allow thy will to pass through to deliver a message to eliminate suffering or alleviate suffering in the space. So I'd love to hear your process, because I got to witness it last night, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Your process around when you are no longer in the driving seat. What does that feel like on the inside of your being? And how do you communicate with these beings, or how do you give access to them for them to come in, and what it feels like?
Well, I always usually say that, to put everyone in context, that I usually say I don't like spirituality. I like to set it in context. It's not that I don't like it. It's that I grew up in an environment that was more or artistic or scientist. So I had no religion, no spirituality at all. I just started to understand what the world of spirituality meant when I was maybe 17, 18 years old. So before, I had no clue about that. All the spirituality that I knew about was from the guides and beings that I was seeing since I was born. So for me, the spirituality was talking to them, them teaching me about the plants, about things, animals, humans, emotions, history, helping me with homework also. So that was basically my relationship with the unseen, with other dimensions, until I started to understand how humans perceive the other dimensions. Because when I share my story to people that were willing to help me, they started to tell me, oh, this is this, or this is what we call like that, or there's a book about a master that describes this. Or so I started to learn that from them. But the word channeling, of course, is one of the things that I learned from people, not from those beings. From the point of view of people, we here say there are other beings that come to talk through us, and they take your body and they use your body to speak through you. From the point of view of the beings that taught me what was channeling, actually, they describe it in a very different way. They describe it like everything is information, and the physical aspect is the device through where that information goes through. So anyone who is tuned to download that app will be able to receive that information. So it's not that you're channeling a being, you're channeling an option of data that you can become. So if you dare to become, and you realize that the device is just a device, it's not who you really are. So you are able to receive it. You are able to be a bridge, a channel for that information to come. So along my life, I have been recognizing that Matias is actually a construction of my mind, is a construction of something that I'm really that my truth in the spiritual realm is who designed Matias. So I am not a real being. I am just a projection needed to do something. So when I started to live my life through that, honoring Matias, honoring this creation, honoring who I am, but also not believing that this is me. So I open myself to be others. I open myself to receive the data that is around. And so that's why the process for me is like, it's not like I'm giving my body to others, is that I am allowing myself to become that. And that's why I enjoy it. Even when dark beings have been talking through me, which has been very difficult, because some people say, why they treat you like this, or why they have to hurt you in this way. And I said, no, they are not hurting me. It's just that if I have the shape of a triangle and the other one has the shape of a square, in order to fit so I can channel it, I have to shape myself into a square. And to do that, a part of me can be a little bit broken or wounded, but then I can repair it, and it can be also very smooth. It's just that with practice, it's better. And so I don't think that there are beings that can hurt you. It's just yourself hurting yourself because you are not accepting what is coming through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we all can do that.
Mm-hmm.
But we are so trying to survive with our ego, trying to be who we think we are, that we are not allowing ourselves to become everything.
Mm-hmm. This makes perfect sense to me from the context of when I did my darkness retreat, 4 days and 4 nights in complete pitch black. There was the day 1 and day 2, I was fighting it. And after day 2, I had to crack my ego to allow myself to receive and feel the grief that I was feeling and had been far too busy to feel. On the other side of being able to give myself the permission to completely decompose, then when there was no identity in the darkness, all that was left was that which was needed. Mm-hmm. And that was so many different archetypes that started to come through, which was the lady of the dark, an old abuela, to a tiny child, to an animal, to an insect. Like there was beings that were moving through me that ultimately were just guiding me back home. However, I had to have no identity for that to be able to be accessible. So could you explain a little bit more about how this is available to everybody? Because of the memory that you have from all of your lifetimes, you've, from my perspective, have had the access to being able to play with many different dimensions at once. How is this available to people that do not have the memory of their previous lifetimes, but recognize by being human, this is actually an aspect of what it means to be alive?
Well, we all have the information of the everything, because basically we are made up of the same atoms as everything is made of. So if you go to the very basis of energy and the very basis of information, which information, the word information means process of taking form, of taking a shape. That's what it means. So we all have the information of everything that is taking shape constantly, which means you have, we talked about that 2 days ago, nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon as the basis for everything. And we have that in every star, in every galaxy, in every world. And now we have it here in life. And so basically a tree, a dinosaur, a dog, a human, this microphone is all made with the same atoms. just organized in a different way. So it's all information. Everything is information. So it means that throughout evolution, we are not humans. We are just atoms being organized in a different way, which means that we have the information of the fish, we have the information of the whales, we have the information of the monkeys, we have the information of everything. We have the information of other planets. So you inside, you are everything. The thing is that in order to access that, you have to give through your consciousness an order, like organizing the energy towards what you want to become. So your whole energy, information will organize towards that. So it will search inside of you the data that is encoded to that thing that you want to become or that thing that you want to connect with. And in order to do that, you need imagination. And that's one of the main things that we have been killing throughout our entire evolution as humans, because we are allowed to imagine until we are 7 years old. After 7 years old, it's like you're not the child anymore. You have to behave. You have to be you. You have to take care of this. So suddenly imagining starts to be a bad thing. Like it takes you out from reality. You're not responsible, all these kind of things. So when you're a child, you can become anything you want and you can awake the information. That's why the first 7 years of your life, you have the chance of knowing anything. You can learn many languages, mathematics, complex things, because what we learn in the first 7 years is because we are able to imagine. And then we just learn from the previous concepts that we have learned in those 7 years because we stop imagining. So we start to be taught in a very linear way. And that's why we start to create a personality, an ego, and then it's so difficult for us to detach from that we stop imagining. We stop being able to awaken the patterns that we have within. Mm-hmm. So the best way we have to start opening that information is imagination. But we think that imagination is, I met a lot of people that when they were connecting to the higher self, they said, maybe I'm just imagining that. And I said, yes, that's the point. Exactly. You are imagining that because the universe is mind. The only way the universe can create is through imagination. So
we can only create as far as our imagination is willing to go.
Exactly.
Yeah. And ultimately, there's a quote, I don't know who originally said it, but the creative adult is the child that survived. Mm-hmm. So what I noticed within you from being able to get to know you and the friendship that we developed is your childlike play. Like you can meet me in that space. Like the depth in which you go and the places in which you create from is founded in your ability to play. And your ability to play is directly sharing with me that your child survived. And the child is the imagination. And so I've noticed that if a child sits in a cardboard box, but the child believes it's in a rocket ship to the moon, the energy is what the universe is responding to. So the universe doesn't give us what we want. The universe gives us who we are. Mm-hmm. And if who we are is imagining or feeling that we are in a rocket ship, then that has to, by the law of resonance, bring in more of that energy that's available. And so I think that this huge piece, and I would love to hear your perspective on the importance of joy, specifically right now when we are seeing the ugliest, most rotten parts of our society being purged out on a mass scale. And we can talk about this in a little bit. It's very confronting for even being on social media right now to be in a position of leadership and the projections or the expectations of that position and that role while simultaneously navigating our own personal relationship within all of this and our own personal process of what's being purged within us in an internal way as within, so without. So if we're seeing the most rotten things coming up in humanity, we're also seeing the most rotten things coming up within ourselves, which is going back to the unfucking ourselves, basically. And so in the same breath, that can feel like a sense of guilt for having privileges or having joy or having access to a moment that's really deeply meaningful and deep and profound and gives you access to ecstasy. So I'm curious around your perspective of the importance of not spiritually bypassing our grief, but allowing all of it to exist and the importance of our joy at this time.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will take the magic of it for a moment, which is what is joy and what is suffering is basically a chemical reaction in your brain that determines what you feel related to the environment. So it's like, this gives me pleasure or this can kill me. So we started to create this nerve system related to that, to survival. Okay, this can kill me. So in order for me to know that it can kill me, I have to feel suffering. So if I suffer, I know that that could be harmful. So if this gives me pleasure, it's because it's good for me. So we started to create in our brain, in our nerve system, a way to identify easily what is bad for me, what is good for me, in order to survive longer. So that created is the same nervous system and the same scale of feeling, the same one. But when I go to this side, I feel suffering. When I go to the other side, I feel pleasure. So when I go closer to pleasure, I feel joy, which is basically the harmony process of pleasure, meaning that I am only finding things that makes me expand, that makes me feel great, that fulfill me, and these kind of things. But in the other hand, if the environment is harmful, I will constantly go to the other side. So the brain knows that this environment can kill me. The problem, what was the problem here? That most of humans have survived for many years in their lives because of suffering. We had to work hard in the fields in order to get food. So you have to do as much as you can, and you have to sweat, and you have to suffer so you can have food and share with your family, and you have to be grateful with your parents and blah, blah. So our bodies, without understanding morality, our bodies discover that even through suffering, I can survive longer. So we created a culture and religions saying that those who suffer will receive a good award. And they invented the idea of heaven or paradise. Paradise is a word that was invented in the Middle East, and that word means a well of water in between walls. So whenever they found a well, they put walls in it and they call it paradise. Okay, so this meaning said that you have to suffer through the desert until you reach the doors of heaven to enter the well of water where life lies and you can find God. So this idea is all related to survival. So it means that you have to suffer in your life, a very tough environment, until you finally reach enlightenment, food, health, whatever. So we have lived that for thousands of years. So most of us have created the idea that if I don't suffer, it doesn't worth it. And yeah. So through culture, religion, and survival, we tend to go to this side, and whoever found the other way, the pleasure, were the people that we don't care about that. The people that said, I don't care of going to there because we have food everywhere, because we can find God in any rock, because I can just eat whatever is here, because I can enjoy life, because I have all what I need in the place that I am. So these people usually didn't have the idea of one God that will save you in the water. These people had wealth everywhere, so they have many gods. The god of this, the god of that, the god of that, and they all fucked each other. Like life is joy. So these people that were suffering that said joy is not for this life is when you reach the other side. We're against the people that said, no, the gods created this reality for us to enjoy it like they do. So we have to do the same as they do. Giving food, sharing, having sex anywhere. So these people call the other ones pagans. And these people started to kill the other people that were enjoying because they said joy is the devil. Because the real goal is for us to make an effort to find the doors of heaven. So you have two visions that are related exactly to geography. So we have been designed culturally against joy because we seek for joy out there in heaven. So that's why a lot of people have created conflict after conflict after conflict because they say you cannot enjoy this life. What you have to do is go beyond to another reality, to heaven. And then you have all these people that say, no, we have to enjoy this life because this life is the one that God created for us to enjoy. So today we have this dichotomy of whether we follow the ancient tradition of we have to suffer to get something or we have to enjoy what we have. And these two are in fight today. So when we talk about how to find joy, basically what we have to think about is which tradition are we following? Which ancestors are we trying to honor by suffering? Because sometimes we don't do what we want just because we want to honor our parents. Or because our parents did the best for us, so I have to become a doctor because my dad wanted for me to be a doctor, but I hate medicine. So how many people are doing what others want for them to do just for honoring the ancestors or honoring someone that they don't even like sometimes? Because they say joy will come after the suffering. So mainly the religions and the cultures that always look for suffering as a way are the traditions or religions that believe in heaven, that believe in everything is out there. So when we started in this civilization now today, started to connect more with Earth, to say we are connected to the planet, we are connected to the plants, we are looking for the medicines like in South America, in South Africa, and the ancient traditions in Mexico, in Egypt. When we start to look for the connection of Earth again, suddenly we realize that we are going to the other side, which is life is joyful. We have everything we need here. We don't have to fight to reach a well of water because there are many wells. There are many places where you can find life and food and safety. So during this whole time, we have created countries, nations, which is all about survival. And in the other hand, now we are talking about becoming together as one. But even though we are still bounded by the ancient tradition of dividing ourselves to see who is the right one to enter the doors of heaven. So joy is very difficult to find when you think that you have to suffer in order to reach something. So I would say, what is your tradition? What is your belief? What is your standard or feeling? If you have to work hard to get something, or you have to enjoy what you have today. So joy comes from that. Joy comes from sitting down under a tree, taking a deep breath, and saying, I have everything. I have everything I need to survive here and now. I can eat a little bit of this tree. I can take a deep breath. I can find shelter. if I have friends, or is such little things that in all the ancient traditions that they started to find that, they said, detach from everything, like go and detach from everything. And they made that as a new religion. Like, you shouldn't be rich because the poor are the one that will reach heaven. No, it's not that. Actually is who is detached, not who doesn't have anything. Who is detached from the things because knows that he or she has exactly what he needs in that precise moment. That's when you find joy. Mm-hmm. Because joy is actually this nervous system saying, oh, I have it, so this is good. Or the nervous system saying, I don't have it, and I have to work hard to get it. So otherwise I can die. So it's just a decision on how do I want to live my life that changed my perception of the nervous system that will send signals of joy or suffering according to what my aim is.
So I quickly want to share with you something that I've incorporated into my morning practice and my morning routine that has got me feeling some kind of way. AG1 entered my life because my friend was drinking it in the kitchen, and I was like, wait, that looks real healthy. Can I have some? And she was like, yeah, this is actually really amazing for your gut health. It's also amazing for my stress levels. And so I got a little sip of the green Kool-Aid and I liked it. And so I have been incorporating it in my morning to reinvigorate my body to start my day, packing me with all of the nutrients that I'm missing in my regular diet and allowing my body to feel a little bit more rested, knowing that I'm getting everything my body needs for my daily vitality. So if you are interested in learning more about AG1 and the magical benefits that can support our health, then go over to www.ag1.com/blue for a discount code and get started on your subscription of a better health and a better tomorrow. I feel within your words so much permission slip while simultaneously giving a really good review as to where the belief system it was even imprinted in the first place, because the belief system can come from mother, father, grandparents, brother, sister, how they have chosen to live their life and under what law, and then simultaneously also what society asks of us. And then there's the layer of social media and education and just media in general. So there's many, many layers to it, and it's very nuanced. And simultaneously, it does come back to a simplicity of, do I only have access to my growth through a deep level of suffering? I think that can happen very, very strongly also in the spiritual community, is that unless I'm suffering, then I'm not going to evolve. So I must suffer now so that I can actually have access to some sort of more joy later. So it's very interesting, your perspective on it. In addition to that, what I'm thinking about right now also is, what do you believe is the soul contract of those that have been born into countries like Gaza, where they have never experienced freedom? I mean, by any capacity of what we experience it over here in the West. In addition to that, an immense amount of suffering, like complete physical needs, like not even basic needs being met, in an open air prison. Like, I'm curious around your perspective based off of an evolutionary standpoint of these souls contracts. What part do they play in the whole, where a soul has incarnated into these experiences that are still so deeply rooted in survival, where some souls have incarnated into experiences where there's play in childhood and there's freedom of choice, and of course we're not all completely free until every single person on this planet is free. And in the same breath, I'm curious around the evolutionary process or the karmic debt that has happened where we have incarnated into this life in these physical beings, whether they're white or black, or why do we incarnate into these experiences, specifically those that incarnate into a life of suffering?
Well, it's not when you are not aware of yourself and who you are, you cannot live a separate life from your herd. Your herd is the one that determines when you're going to live until you become aware. So, and aware is not what is the truth. Aware is who am I in all of this. Usually, because we have lived in herds since the very beginning of humanity, because we are animals, mammals. So we needed the herd. So usually the herd don't think. The herd moves along in order to survive all together. So in order to survive, you need to also fight back to others. And that creates a strong connection of I need to survive with this. I need to keep together with my family or my group, because otherwise I can be attacked or killed or something like that. So that creates, from very far in time, a kind of repeating situation that is not about souls specifically separated. It's about a herd. It's about a group of people or souls that are traveling together constantly, and that they are still living the same thing of I have to survive. I have to defend myself from others. The others can kill me, so I have to kill first. So all this situation is from a herd point of view. So most of the cultures and countries that are related to very ancient nations or ancient families or clans are still very connected to that. It doesn't matter where they are in the world. They're still very tied to that history. Middle East is very, very complicated land because they barely have land where to prosper. So they don't have where to grow food. They don't have much water. They have many tribes. So the tribes were all the time fighting against each other, even if they had the same god. They had problems to one another. They were creating limits. They were very conflicted to one another. So the only way that they could survive was through empires or dictatorships that put them together by force. So if you see the history of that territory, it is very complicated in many different layers. But when you go to other places, other cultures, the history is completely different. Like certain traditions in Europe or certain traditions in North America. So the way in which they lived their lives was different. And we build, for example, Europe built the idea that instead of living in herds, what they needed to do was to improve the tiny territory that they had. So they created all these tiny little countries that had to evolve faster than the others. So there was a moment that was more about fighting for knowledge than survival, for example. So that created colonialism and stuff. So so it was more about how to live better than how to honor your ancestors. So that spread creates herds of souls that will live according to these new mandates. So in the Middle East, they still keep with the old mandates. They still keep with what was living in the middle of the desert. And that creates a path of suffering, of service, and how to say this word, leaving yourself, your own self behind for the survival of the whole, of the family, of the herd. And that idea plus religion, which is we don't have to live a good life in this life. Our only goal is to make everything good for God. It doesn't matter what happened. We have to follow the rules that He gave us. So you create a consciousness that is not based in happiness and self-awareness. You have created a cultures, traditions that are trapped here. That's why they are trapped outside. Usually the people that live trapped in an idea in a country, in a situation, in a suffering, is because they are trapped in their minds too. Otherwise, there is always a way to escape. There's always a way to transcend, to go away, to do it in a different way. There's always a way. The only reason why a culture keeps trapped is because they're following a pattern that they don't want to face. And other cultures did the opposite. Other cultures, they said, we don't want that. We want to do something different. So, for example, that's why Christianism has divided itself in so many branches, that they all do different stuff. They're trapped in their own ideas. But that led, that break of that religion allowed another break, which was Renaissance, for example, and then colonialism or anything. So that's why there's a part of humanity that are living according to the thoughts and ideas of a whole group of people that thought the same and created a new herd that was freedom, equality, blah, blah, from France and stuff. The all ideas of the Greek people creating a republic, that's a herd. But in the other hand, you have herds that have lived through survival, through women needs to just take care of the children, men just care about the connection with God. Everyone has to work in order to survive and follow these rules, because they didn't have the chance to grow in a different way, because the environment was different, it was difficult. So it's not about a soul in the fifth dimension playing around and saying, oh, in this life, I might go and live in Gaza. No, it's not. It's not like a decision of a free soul that says, I'm going to live a suffering life today. So where do I have to sign? It's not a contract. It's not a soul deciding, I will suffer this life. The soul is actually a wave of energy that moves through time and space. So that soul will adapt to its own frequency. So a free soul will try to be born in free spaces. A jailed soul will born in jail places. So, or will create realities like that. So in between, there are people that wants to be free. They're in between, they say, I want to be free. But what is the freedom? What is the actual freedom that they want? So, and this not only applies for Middle East, it's for everyone. Because, for example, United States never had democracy. And even though they think they had. And it's the only country in the world, besides monarchies, absolute monarchies, that never had real democracy. And even though people believe they do. And so here people is also trapped in another system that they believe is freedom when actually it's not.
It feels like it's more frequency control in the United States.
Yeah.
Would you say that? I mean,
it's more mind.
There's different prisons, ultimately. There's like
Totally.
physical prisons, physical limitations, and simultaneously mental prisons, frequency prisons. And the amount of reaction and anger that I also experience in the US, and also the deep level suffering. Like when I actually really check in beyond the mass, beyond the layers, and I actually like, how are you really doing?
Yeah.
There's always some deep piece that somebody is working through. And mental health in the United States, of all the places that I have visited in the United States, mental health is a real pandemic.
Oh yeah.
And so it seemingly landed the landed the brave and home of the free. But actually it feels like land of the mentally enslaved,
Yes.
which is an invisible prison in itself. For those free souls that have incarnated into this life that do have basic needs met, surrounded by love, or having living an experience that feels like an echo of freedom, what do you feel like is the responsibility? And what I mean by the responsibility is the ability to respond to the suffering that is experiencing right now in the Middle East, right? We have social media, and then there's a lot of anger. If you're not saying anything on social media, then you're not on the right side of history. If you are saying something on social media, then you've chosen a side. The amount of nuance and the amount of layers, while also simultaneously everybody's expected to be historians overnight around what is really going on in the Middle East. And so the amount of complexities of what the internet space specifically, the social media space is presenting right now, while simultaneously this feeling of helplessness of saying, what can I do with the gifts that I have been given? What is the most supportive thing to support with the alleviation of suffering? And is that a naive even belief that you can? While simultaneously, is it a naive belief to say that you can't? So it's just a very interesting time right now. And I think that from the perspective of somebody that has incarnated into a very liberated incarnation, what do you believe is the responsibility and the role that do have their basic needs met to support with the alleviation of the suffering on the planet?
Well, first of all, stop seeing the news. And why that? Because now everyone is talking about what is happening in Gaza. Everyone forgot about what is happening in Nigeria, in Mali, in Mauritania. Everyone is forgotten about what is happening in regions like the Uyghur in China, or the Armenian people living in East Turkey or Azerbaijan. So, or the people in Pakistan, or nobody talks anymore about Afghanistan, and they are still suffering. So it's just because there's a media willing for you to see something. And suffering, there's everywhere. There's many places that are in war. What happened with Ukraine? Nobody's talking anymore about Ukraine, and the war is still there. I don't know if people remember. Crimea, when happened the thing in Crimea, everyone was like, oh, yeah. And why? Because we are drawn to see a conflict in the world because there is an interest for some media or something that we pay attention to a specific conflict, and not all the rest that are happening. Like, nobody cares about Sudan, and Sudan is terrible right now. It's terrible what is happening in the limits with Chad and so on. So it's horrible what is happening. But Chad, who knows about Chad? It's like so. So also there is a fake responsibility that we are all reflecting today, which is who has the best words to say about what is happening right now today. And I think that those who have lived freedom or has the pattern of freedom, they actually have to talk through freedom about everything that is happening in the world, every conflict that is happening. The reason why Middle East is so important is because all our traditions came from there. All our masters came from that land. All our conflicts came from there. So it's very sensitive because, of course, not many things happen in Mali or Chad, but in Israel and Palestine, they did. So that's why we are all so connected to that land, and we are more connected to that than what happens in Ukraine, maybe, let's say, or in Armenia. But those who has the freedom inside, within, I think have to be people that are not in a side of war or peace. Those who are with freedom basically has the responsibility or the answer, the respond to actually show that we are trapped not only in a war, we are trapped in our minds, that we are trapped in ideas, in division, in separation constantly, that the world is still trying to find ways to separate us all in many different moments. When it looks like if we are understanding what unity means, a new war appears to divide us all in two. So I think those who are free should not talk about sides or what is wrong or what is right. I think that those who are free need to express the freedom of understanding that there is a middle point that is not about who is doing right or who is doing wrong. It's about the responsibility of showing that we are all one, that countries, nations, conflicts, and wars are just about a tiny group of people whose interests are in you to watch it, in you to see this conflict. Because I need money, because I need a word, because I need political whatever, power or whatever. And but when you go to the very essence of the human being, you just have to think about children that are under 7 years old, that had no idea about nations, no idea about anything else. They barely understand what a religion is. They just want to play. And they don't care about the color of the other person. They don't care about the religion or the nation or the origin of that person. This is all our bullshit as grown-ups, because the news and the books are telling us what is wrong and what is right. So who are actually free must think as a child, not as an adult. Must think as how a 5-year-old kid would think about what is happening there. The solutions are very easy, because a 5-year-old, they would say, well, stop fighting. I don't know. It's very easy, but there are so many complex things behind that humanity have created, defending something that is not something to defend. That we have created so many divisions that are lies, that those who actually are free needs to start thinking about how a child would build a world if there are no adults. And that's the middle point, I think. That's a responsibility.
It's so interesting that you said the 5-year-old self, because when I was at Arcadia recently, we were just